Okay, was this hard? Was this hard or no? No opinion? Was this hard? Our object has been all along to reform our federal system. This passage. Okay. Is this hard? Yes? Matthew, was this hard?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah,
Oh.
because I didn't read.
Okay. Okay, just a second. I want this to show up properly. Okay. So you see in the prologue it says, it's talking about like one of the guys, he was part of the anti-federalist movement, right? Is this usually how, okay, yeah, that's better, okay. Okay. So if you can't see this, take a look at your books also. I mean, take a look at your packet also. So just use this as a guide, okay? Don't. All right, so let's take a look at passage 1. I mean, the prologue. It says it's a published letter written by an author known only as the Federal Farmer. Okay, we don't know who this guy is. He's a farmer, I guess. So, do farmers write this well? It's pretty sophisticated language, right? Passage 2 is excerpted from a published letter, pseudonym James Winthrop. Winthrop was part of the anti-federalist movement. Okay, so it's 1787. So, okay, we know that it's going to be about the Federalists and the anti-federalist movement, okay? We talked about this last class, right? Okay, so I'm not going to repeat myself. So let's just take a look. Our object, okay, so our object, is this talking about like an object? Okay, we use this word as goal pretty often, especially in history passages, okay? Pretty often. So our goal has been all along to reform our federal system and to strengthen our governments, okay? Yeah, okay, reform was our goal. Let's just say that. I mean, I'm not gonna annotate strengthen. It's pretty much the same thing. I can just grab this one word, say, okay, this is our goal. Reform is our goal. But, all right, here we go, right? The point of emphasis comes here now. What's important is the part after this contrast word. A new object now presents. Okay, so I'm just gonna circle this, right? Okay, so this is what used to be the goal, right? What used to be the goal was reform, right? But what's now the goal is, I don't know, what's about to follow, right? Now we have a new goal. What's the new goal? Okay, so that's what you should be thinking about when you're reading, okay? So what's the next goal? The next goal, the plan of government now proposed is evidently calculated totally to change, okay, in time our condition as a people. Okay, so the plan of government now proposed. What's the government now proposed? So if you don't have any prior knowledge, you might have trouble understanding this, okay? What's the government now proposed? What does this refer to?
One consolidated government.
Yes, the strong consolidated government, the United States government as you know it right now, right? The one proposed in the Constitution, right? Is evidently calculated totally change in time, okay, our condition as a people, okay? So they want to change the condition. Okay, so I don't understand what this is. What do you mean exactly change the condition? So with that in mind, I want to keep going down. Instead of being 13 republics, Yes, we know about this. The 13 republics refer to the colonies, right? So instead of them being all separate republics, separate countries in a sense, under a federal head, it is clearly designed to make us one consolidated government. So he's saying it's not a confederacy, right? This would be a confederacy, right? It's not 13 republics under a federal head. It's one consolidated government like the United States as you know it nowadays. See? So that's the new goal, I guess, right? Making one consolidated government, changing the conditions of the people. Whether such a change can ever be effected in any manner, whether it can be, okay, so semicolon here, right? How is this semicolon being used? So you know how we usually use semicolons? We talked about this before, right? We have a sentence before and after this, but is this the case here? How is this being used? Yes, for listing, right? So if you have a complicated list, right? If you have like a really long phrase, or if you want to list cities or whatever, right? If you're going to list cities, you're going to use a comma, right? So if you have a comma already and you just want to list cities, you know, it's kind of annoying if you have it's hard to see, right? So that's why we use semicolons in this, like instead of this list, right? Instead of saying A, B, and C, we say A semicolon, B semicolon, and C, right? So that's how we're using the semicolon here, right? So this is evidently a list, right? So I just want to get the gist, right? You don't need to understand all 3 points, right? So you can save a little bit of time here. Whether such a change can ever be affected in any manner, whether it can be affected without convulsions and civil wars, do you need to understand convulsions? No, but I understand civil war, right? So I can just take this, right? Whether such a change will not totally destroy the liberties of this country, time only can determine. Okay, so here's his uncertainty. Here's his point though, right? So does he say, like, okay, so he said he's a federal farmer. Okay, so at first, you know, my instinct is, okay, this guy is a federalist, right? And this guy, passage 2, is an anti-federalist. So I would imagine them going against each other, but it's not exactly that by what you see here, right? So maybe he's not a federalist. Maybe he's also an anti-federalist. But I mean, he shows some uncertainty, right? He's saying he's showing some reservations about this new government, right? So he's saying time only can determine. We don't know what's going to happen yet. Okay, so far, everything that we've read, it goes along perfectly with our prior knowledge, right? They had that the old Confederacy, but now it's moving on to a new constitution. And then he's saying, you know, we don't know how this is going to affect people, right? There's that element of uncertainty. So that's the first paragraph, right? Okay, so after you read the first paragraph, I think you should kind of go back. I mean, what I like to do in complicated passages like these is after you're done reading a paragraph means the author is trying to convey a single idea through this paragraph, right? Sometimes there's multiple points if you look at it in a more strategic manner, but in essence, it's telling us, oh, this is one point, right? This is one point that I want to make. That's the writer telling us that. So just kind of recoup the paragraph itself. Just look through it really quick and see what point that you're going to save, like which point you're going to set as an anchor point for your understanding of the rest of the passage. So I would say it's this part, right? Time only can determine what's going to happen, right? Okay, so with that, we can move on to the second paragraph, okay? So let's go to the second paragraph. It says the Confederation was formed when great confidence was placed in the voluntary exertion of individuals and of the respective states. Okay, so Confederacy was formed when we had great confidence in the voluntary exertions of individuals, whatever this means, okay? I mean, if you don't understand this, what should you do? Should you read this sentence over and over again? That's where you would waste time, okay? So if you're not so sure, like it is an abstract concept. So you want to rather search for points, okay? And here we also have a semicolon, right? So it means that whatever is going to follow after the semicolon is going to be related to the idea before this. So you want to trust in that, and you want to just read on, okay? And the framers of the government, right, to guard against usurpation, so limited and checked the powers. Okay, so they did not want tyranny to happen. They didn't want any usurpation of any rights of the people, right? So checking the power. What does that mean? When we usually talk about governments, we say, anybody heard about checks and balances, right? We talked about this last time, right? 3 branches of government. Why do they have 3 branches of government? In order to keep the other branches of the government in check, right? They don't want power concentrated into one branch, right? So it's like they're kind of looking after each other. I mean, not looking over each other, right? Saying like, let's make sure we're doing the right thing, okay? So that's that. We find, therefore, members of Congress urging alterations in the federal system almost as soon as it was adopted, right? Okay, so this is kind of new information. I don't know anything about this with my prior knowledge, right? Because I only know the big picture. But he's mentioning that, people wanted to change this as soon as it was adopted, right? This refers to the Confederacy, right? The old government, the really loose government, right? So they wanted to change this. The first interesting question is how far the states can be consolidated into one entire government on free principles. Okay, first interesting question. Okay, so I just want to number this. That would be the best way to go about this, right? First, he said first interesting question. So I guess there's going to be more questions coming. Okay, so anyway, how far the states can be consolidated into one entire government on free principles. So he's asking, can we keep the free principles if we're consolidating the states? Won't we have some freedom lost? Won't we have some free principles lost if we're trying to do that, right? Wouldn't we inevitably limit some rights, limit some free principles, right? So it says, the happiness of the people at large must be the great object, the great goal, with every honest statesman. Okay, statesman refers to what?
Citizen?
Nope.
Politician?
Yeah, politicians, representatives, I guess, right? And he will direct every movement to this point, right? Okay, so the happiness of the people, right? So, obviously, right? That should be the goal of every politician, right? If we are so situated meaning placed or, being placed into a situation as a people as not to be able to enjoy equal happiness and advantages under one government, the consolidation of the states cannot be admitted. Okay, so this conditional statement, I feel like, is what he really wants to get at. Up to this point, he's been building up points to get to this, right? So he's saying, if we can't enjoy equal happiness and advantages, if we're going to have that happiness and advantages taken away, then the consolidation of the states cannot be admitted. The consolidation of the states would be that constitution, right? So he's saying, if we were to sacrifice our happiness for this, then we shouldn't do this. Still, I don't see his exact stance. I don't see if he totally agrees with this or if he totally disagrees just yet. He's just showing some reservations on this, right? So, yeah, the language is not so certain, okay? So let's take a look here. Touching the federal plan, I do not think much can be said in its favor. Okay, here we go, right? I do not think much can be said in its favor. So we can't really say good things about this, okay? And then we have a colon, which means whatever's going to follow after this is going to be supporting this point made previously, right? The sovereignty of the nation, without coercive and efficient powers to collect the strength of it, cannot always be depended on to answer the purposes of government. And in a Congress of Representatives of Sovereign States, there must necessarily be an unreasonable mixture of powers, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So do you need to try hard to understand this? Well, not really, because I know that it's detail, right? I know that it's detail supporting this, right? He's saying, you know, I don't really have much to say in favor of this new government, right? So after all, I guess he is an anti-federalist, right? He's saying, okay, I don't really see what's so valuable here. And then this is him justifying his point, okay? So if there is a question on this part, then I'll come back to it later. Then I'll worry about it later. But right now, I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste time getting the nitty-gritty parts. Why? Because I think I told you guys this before, but usually when you read a passage, and especially when you read dual passages, it's really hard to remember more than like 4 or 5 points. It's really hard. Like if I just give you like random two-digit numbers, you can't memorize more than like 5 or 6. It would be really difficult. Like I mean, not saying like, you know, not if I ask you in a minute, you'll probably remember more than that. But if like 2 minutes pass, then it will be hard for you to remember. So what I'm trying to say is try to leave as much detail out when you're reading it for the first time. Like just have that mindset that, you know, the justifying part, the details, I'll come back to it later if they ask me about it. And usually when they ask a local question, there's going to be a line reference question along with it. So then I can refer back to it and I'm not wasting any time, right? But anyway, well, what does sovereignty mean? We talked about this.
Have independent control.
Oh, control. Yes.
Control. 자치.
Okay, 자치. Okay, yeah, that's right. It's saying nobody can make decisions on my behalf, right? So if Korea is a sovereign state, right? Korea can make decisions on her own, right? Nobody can make decisions on their behalf, right? That's what it means, a sovereign country. Like in this case, the sovereignty of the nation, it's talking about that idea itself, the sovereignty of the nation, like who owns that country, the ownership of that country without, well, anyway, I'm not going to read this for now. If they ask me about it, then I'm going to come back to this, okay? So right now, I just want to selectively remember the most central points, right? Okay, so let's go to the next paragraph. What does it say here? Independent of the opinions of many great authors. Okay, so we use this today, just today, right? Remember? Independent of something? What was that? What did that mean? Unrelated to, right? So this is often used also, right? Independent. So regardless of the opinions of many great authors, right? Okay, I wonder what these people say, but it uses the word many, right? So I feel like the author is, the writer here is going to disagree with these authors. Anyway, it's like a minor opponent's point that he presents. I'm going to underline their point of views if it shows up, okay? So what's the opinions of many great authors? I can kind of guess that they're going to be in favor, right? These great authors are probably in favor of the Constitution as opposed to the writer of this passage, right? That a free elective government cannot be extended over large territories, right? Yeah, so a few reflections must evince that one government and general legislation alone never can extend equal benefits to all parts of the United States. Okay, this is kind of his argument, right? So just one government and general legislation cannot extend equal benefits to all the United States, right? It's saying like, you know, it can be pretty, it's really difficult to be pretty impartial, right? Impartial meaning unbiased. Right? Some parts might benefit more than others if we have a single government, right? So how are we going to take care of that logistical issue? Different laws, customs, and opinions exist in the different states. It's trying to justify this using this point, right? So it's mostly, so this is because there are different laws, customs, and opinions kind of thing, right? So you see that implicit relationship here, which by a uniform system of laws would be unreasonably invaded. Okay, so again, so at this point, he's elaborating on this point a little bit more, right? It's mostly because of these situations, right? Different laws, customs, and opinions. Because of these, it's you can't really extend equal benefits to all the parts, right? It's difficult to be impartial, right? Okay, good. The United States contain about 1 million square of miles. Okay, again, he's supporting that again, right? Right? Saying it's way too big, and in half a century will probably contain 10 millions of people, right? Okay. Oh, that's it, right? So let's go back to the passage, okay? So after you're done reading the passage, what you want to do, I think I've mentioned this before, spend like a good 20 seconds looking over the passage. Just digging for the main idea, okay? So I'm not saying read the passage again, but you've annotated the important points, right? If you've annotated the important points, right? So this is his first idea, right? Time only can determine, right? So we don't know if, so this is kind of his background in explaining what the situation is. The situation is we're trying to change our old government into a new government and the goals of that. But is this going to be good? He says, I'm not so sure. Only time can tell. And then it says in this part, happiness of the people must be the great object for the politicians. And then with this point, he says, every movement to, this conditional that we talked about, right? If we are so situated as a people not to enjoy equal happiness and advantages, he takes this for granted. He says, yeah, this is, of course, this is something that we need, right? Always, regardless, this is a given for us. Equal happiness and advantages. But it would be really hard to implement this through this federal plan. That's his argument, right? Okay. So at first he introduces that element of uncertainty, right? Saying, I really don't know about this. And what he takes for granted is happiness and advantages should be for everybody, right? And then after that, he says, through the federal plan, too difficult to obtain, right? Too meaning this, right? So this would be difficult to obtain, right? And then it says it's too big, right? We're so diverse, right? It's so diverse, it will be difficult to implement this. So I would say like these four main points is this passage, right? So what have we been doing? Okay, so don't think of this as like a language exercise. We're not so much concerned about comprehending each and every sentence, but what you should be doing is you have that prior knowledge, you can use that prior knowledge, and first of all, on a macro scale, yeah, you want to try to understand every sentence, but you want to move on if you don't understand that certain sentence and you just want to get the gist of it, understand the gist of the passage and see, okay, which point is supporting which point. So you're just going to look at the paragraph itself, and then we came to the conclusion that this is what he wants to get at eventually. And then we did that for every paragraph, and then after that, you look at the entirety of the passage, and then you think, okay, so these points, they all lead to this, saying, you know, it's because of all the different laws, because of the size, it would be difficult to implement happiness and advantages for all the people, right? Okay, so let's go to passage 2 then. So passage 2, okay, so I want to check the prologue again. So in the prologue, Winthrop was part of the anti-federalist movement. Okay, so this person is also an anti-federalist. Okay, so I wasn't so sure. So they probably will agree. Okay, so when they agree, what should you do? Okay, when you're reading passage 2, you should always try to put passage 1 and 2 into a conversation. What does it mean, put it into a conversation? It means you want to find the common ground and you want to notice the differences. So you should be more careful. So ideally, you would spend more time reading passage 2 than reading passage 1. Why? Because you're still thinking about passage 1 while you're reading passage 2. Okay? So let's take a look. Let us now consider, okay, so let's think about how far the new system is consistent with the happiness of the people and their freedom. Okay, so common ground with passage 1, right? So this is their concern. This is like for passage 1 and 2, this is their common concern, happiness and freedom, right? It is the opinion of the ableist writers on the subject that no extensive, ableist writers, I want to box this. Why? Because this is not the author's opinion. He's deferring to other people, able writers. Able writers meaning, really capable writers, right? So people who are really competent, right? So what do these able writers think? That no extensive empire can be governed upon republican principles. Okay, so we can't have such a big republic. It's impossible. What's a republic? We talked about this. Representative democracy, right? And that such a government will degenerate into a despotism, right? Okay, so this is a strong word that passage 1 does not use, right? Passage 1 does refrain from this. I would say this is a lot stronger than passage 1 and this connotative diction. What's a despotism?
Opposite of democracy.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like a dictatorship, right? So it's sacrificing people for, that would be totalitarianism. But anyway, a despot is kind of like a dictator, right? Unless it be made, unless it be made up of a confederacy of smaller states, okay? So this is the exception, right? This is the exception. If it's a confederacy of smaller states, so he thinks this is something that's more desirable. Well, not him, but the ableist writers, right? The ableist writers believe that a confederacy of smaller states will, it's possible that this can lead to republican principles, but not such an extensive empire. That would be too difficult, right? Each having the full powers of internal regulation. Okay, this is what they view as desirable. The ableist writers, what do they think is desirable? Smaller states, confederacy of smaller states. What's a confederacy? It's not necessarily one nation together. It's just think of the European Union. That's what a confederacy is. We talked about this, right? So it's not necessarily under one government, but they're just kind of united in a sense, right? This is precisely the principle which has hitherto, what does hitherto mean? Until now. This is precisely the principle which has hitherto preserved our freedom. Okay, so this is what preserved our freedom. Like striving for this, confederacy of smaller states, right? No instance can be found of any free government of considerable extent which has been supported upon any other plan. So I can't find any precedents, that's what he's saying, right? We don't have anything like this before. We never had anything like this, right? You guys know what a precedent is? What's a precedent? Something that happened before that you can refer back to and say, okay, I will use that as a guide to make my decisions for the future. That would be some kind of precedent, right? Usually in the court of law, right, they use precedents as their guiding principle. If you look at the United States law, I know they do have statutes, like a kind of written laws. They do have that, but mostly in court, how they make decisions, this is the difference between like Korean law and American law. There's actually like no written law. No. In the States, okay. In Korea, there's everything's written down. It's kind of like France, okay. The Korean laws, the legal system, they modeled themselves after what is it? The French system, right? So it's kind of different. There's no written law, but there is an esoteric law somewhere. That's what they believe, right? And that law is expressed through a lot of precedents. That's how American justice system works, right? So they always refer back to precedents. Okay, they made a decision like this. Okay, so it must be there is some kind of principle here, and then that's how they do that. Well, anyway, yeah, precedents. It's saying that we don't have any precedents. Large and consolidated empires may indeed dazzle the eyes of a distant spectator. So distant spectator might look at this and say, "Wow, that's so good, that's so desirable," right? With their splendor, so they will look upon this. They will look upon this empire and say, "Wow, well, how good, how fantastic," right? But if examined more nearly, are always found to be full of misery. Okay, so what is this? Appearance versus essence, right? So if you look at it from the outside, it might look good. But what is he saying? It's actually misery if you look at this. Like all the big empires, it's impossible. Okay, so did I see this idea somewhere? Yeah, in passage 1, exactly, right? Passage 1 said it's too large, right? It's too large, and the freedoms and advantages, the happiness, it would not extend to every part equally, right? And this one, it's saying republicanism. It's nearly impossible in an empire big like this, right? The reason is obvious. Okay, so now this is what he's going to be talking about. This sentence would be the guideline sentence, right? Okay, what do I mean guideline sentence?
Sets up the information.
Okay, it sets up the information that's about to follow. How do we identify a guideline sentence? So there's going to be an unexplained idea, right? I mean, the example that we used in class, you guys remember this? Okay, so if I say to you, if I come up to you, there are several reasons as to why you should study. So if I say this, so I come up to you guys and I say, okay, there's several reasons why you guys should study, and then I just leave. That would be weird, right? You would expect me to elaborate on the reasons, right? And if you see a sentence like this, so if you see an unexplained idea within a sentence, that's how you should read the next sentence. That should be your anchor point, right? It's introducing, it's setting up the information that's about to follow. Same here, right? The reason is obvious, right? So that should be your focus. Now, we're kind of switching up gears, right? He did make a statement, right? He did make a statement that it might look good from the outside, but if you look from the inside, if you look at what it is actually, its essence is misery. But, and now he's kind of switching gears, saying, okay, so why is this the case? Why is this the case? The reason is obvious. In large states, the same principles of legislation will not apply to all the parts. Oh, did I see that somewhere? Right? Isn't this the same as passage 1, right? Will not apply to all the parts. It will be difficult to be impartial and apply to every single part of the states, right? Laws not being made by the people who felt the inconveniences did not suit their circumstances. Okay, well, probably would be elaborating on this. It is under such tyranny that the Spanish, not going to read this. Why? Why would he talk about the Spanish provinces all of a sudden? Guys, remember detail, right? How do we identify a detail sentence? Well, first of all, what is a detail sentence? First of all, you have some kind of general point. While you're reading this general point, it's not that you recognize that it's a general point, but you only recognize that it's a general point because the sentence after that would have a scope that is reduced, right? So we would have a blanket statement covering like all instances, like the example that we talked about. History repeats itself, right? If we say something like that, it applies to all instances. But if I start the next sentence with saying, like, for example, like in 1941, something like that, then I know the scope is reduced. Why would I talk about why would I talk about something in a reduced scope? The only reason is to support that general point made in the previous sentence, right? The exception is if you start this sentence with the contrast word. If I say history repeats itself, but I start the next sentence saying, but in 1941, that would be different. What would that be? That would be mentioning an exception or something like that, right? It's saying, yeah, history usually repeats itself, but in 1941, that didn't happen, usually, right? This is, not usually, but something like that, right? Anyway, so here we're talking about Spanish provinces. Why would we talk about this? This is detail supporting this, right? Same principles will not apply to all the parts. This is what we want, but this won't happen. So that's why an empire so large will not be able to sustain republicanism, right? Okay, it is under such tyranny that the Spanish provinces languish, and such would be our misfortune and degradation if we should submit to have the concerns of the whole empire managed by one legislature. So it's saying it's undesirable. So going along the same lines, right? To promote the happiness of the people, it's necessary that there should be local laws. All right, saying something is necessary. Whenever a passage tells you that something is necessary, that's pretty important, right? I mean, if you're, right, think about this. Why would you write something to begin with? One of the primary reasons why you would write something is to communicate the fact that you need something. We need to do something. That's always one of the primary reasons why why people write nonfiction, right? Unless it's for fun, right? But it's, you know what I mean, right? So something that is necessary, always important. So it's saying, okay, necessary that there should be local laws. All right, so that's a point, right? Local laws, and it is necessary that those laws should be made by the representative of those who are immediately subject to the want of them. Okay, so it's saying something like, okay, you know, we're gonna have all these local places. We're gonna have all these different states, but it can't be that one giant legislative assembly is making laws for each and every one of them. Because, you know, if we have the same laws as in Florida as we do in like Boston, Massachusetts, it would be different because, you know, the industry is different and the climate's different, the people are different, the geography is different. So there would be too many variables, right? So something like that. Okay, so let's go to the next part. It's impossible for one code of laws to suit Georgia and Massachusetts, right? So this is an example, right? This is an example supporting the previous statement made in the last part of the paragraph, right? They must therefore, what should you do? Legislate for themselves. Okay, he's repeating his point, right? So every state should legislate for themselves. Legislate meaning make laws, right? Everyone should be able to make laws themselves. The laws of Congress are in all cases to be the supreme law of the land. Okay, so laws of Congress, supreme law, and paramount to the constitutions of the individual states. This new system is therefore a consolidation of all the states into one large mass, however diverse the parts, right? So he's saying this is undesirable. We don't want to consolidate it into one part. They're all so different, right? The idea of an uncompounded republic on an average 1,000 miles in length, yeah, this person also talks about the size, right? And 800 in breadth and containing 6 million of inhabitants all reduced to the same standard of morals or habits and of laws is in itself an absurdity, right? I mean, he's kind of summing the passage up now, right? He's revisiting the ideas that he's already mentioned, right? And contrary to the whole experience of mankind. But I would say this passage is stronger than the first passage in terms of its diction, right? We talked about this when we were talking about the essay, right? We want to look at the word choice in order to deduce the tone or attitude of the passage. You know, like him saying like despotism or absurdity, right? Contrary to the whole experience of mankind, all that part, therefore, of the new system which relates to the internal government of the state ought at once to be rejected. Okay, so that ought to be something. Should do something. So this is a prescription, right? Saying this should be the case. This is my suggested course of action. This is what we should do, right? Good? Okay, questions on this passage? I know you guys aren't going to ask questions, but questions? All right, so the two passages pretty much agree with each other. Do we see any notable differences? I mean, except the tone, I don't really see much difference, right? I guess passage 2 elaborates on it a little bit, elaborates on the ideas a little bit more, right? But I think they go along the same context, right? So now, so a common mistake that you do, okay, so what did I say today? If you see a main purpose question, do you want to go back to the passage? No, do not go back to the passage, okay? I mean, you're not that good anyway. Like, I mean, I'm not saying just you guys, just any high school student in general. Like if you're like, okay, unless you're like a really exceptional case, really. Like, so because if you go back, and what would be even worse is you going back to the passage after reading one answer choice. Terrible, right? Do I need to talk about this again? Do I need to talk about blood types again? Wait. AB. Are you AB? Your blood type? No? O. A. B. Yes? Okay, so I tried 4 people, okay? I tried 4 people, got 1. There's 4 blood types, so statistically, this should be the case, right? This is what usually happens, right? But people think otherwise, right? Why do people believe in blood types? Because people tell them the blood type first, right? So if I tell you I'm an A, for example, people would think of all the instances in which I behaved like an A. And then they would say, yeah, you're definitely an A, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. I was just saying for example, okay? Well, anyway. So that's why I'm saying this. If you read this answer choice and if you go back to the passage, you will look for instances that conform to this. You will be biased, okay? That's why I'm saying don't go back to the passage after you read a single answer choice. Did you do an MBTI test before? Who did an MBTI test? Oh, okay. What are you? INTJ. Okay. What are you?
I forgot mine. It was like a long time ago.
What are you? ESTJ. INFJ? You didn't? Okay, so you're probably like an... No, I don't. I don't want to guess. I don't want to guess. Okay. Huh. No. Okay. All right. So main purpose of passage 1. So just, when you see this question, just think about the passage as a whole, right? What was it doing? These 4 parts. I mean, if you did take notes, if you took notes, that's the thing. Okay, if you took notes on the side, okay? I mean, some people like to do this. I don't like to do this. I don't like to take notes. I would rather circle keywords. That's what I would do. But if you do this, you can revisit your notes. It's okay. But don't go back to the passage. That's not gonna help you. Okay. So main purpose of passage 1. So what I first just want to do is a true-false test just based on my understanding. Okay, just based on my understanding. If one of the ideas, if the answer choices contain an irrelevant idea, you should be able to weed them out. Okay, if you can't do that, it means you need to spend more time honing your skills reading the passage. Okay, so provide information about plans to reform. No, this is irrelevant. Okay, you should be able to tell that we did not talk about any plans, right? Highlight inconsistent government principles across. No. We need to then talk about specific instances of states, right? But that's not what it is. Introduce plans for a new kind of government that differs. Well, it's not introducing plans. It's saying. We shouldn't really do that. That was passage 1. Question a proposal. There we go. Question a proposal. What's that proposal? Constitution. To consolidate power. Yes, there we go. So D. Which statement about the federal government? Which statement about the federal government most accurately reflects the point of view of the author, passage 1? Okay, so what does he think about the federal government? Okay, federal government. All right, I mean, do we have a line reference question? No, we don't. Okay, so if you don't have a line reference question, it means just go. Just go. You're fine. You're fine. You have those few ideas in your head. You can solve it with that. If you can't, eliminate a few answer choices and then go back. Okay? The current form of government has been in place for too long. Really? Totally irrelevant, right? The proposed changes would bring about more negative consequences. Yes, there will be a lot of negative consequences than maintaining the current form of government would. Yeah, he said the very end point was we shouldn't really do. I don't see any point. I don't see any favorable elements to implementing this new system. So this one would be okay. Well-functioning confederation is impossible. No. He's saying, actually, let's do a confederation. So no, the uniform system of laws proposed by a uniform system of laws will yield bad results. That's what he said. So B is the right answer here. Which idea is presented in passage 2 but not in passage 1? Okay, so for these kinds of questions, right? So for these kinds of questions, what you want to do is well, first, just do like a really quick pass. I mean, if it's not in both passages, I at least want to get rid of that, right? So be pretty lenient with the answers, okay? So A says, the proposed form of government will inevitably result in tyranny. Do you remember that? Despotism, okay? It's asking you, hey, do you remember that? And how do I remember that? Because I was reading with that in mind. I had that mindset, okay? So let's seek the differences between passage 1 and 2. And then I said, okay, this is a pretty strong word, right? Despotism. So that's usually what should happen, okay? So, I mean, this is pretty good. Happiness and liberty of the people should be the Yeah, they both mentioned this. So I know this is not the answer. They did explicitly mention this. The country is too large. They both mentioned this. Too many people. They both mentioned this. It is better for states to govern themselves due to, yeah, these are all things that both passages address. So it would be A for number 3. In explaining their ideas on federal government, both authors make use of which kind of evidence? Historical record? Do we talk about historical records? Like they would say, oh, in 16 something happened in, well, I do remember, did it talk about like some Spanish province or what, Spanish or what was it? Anyway, I do remember that, but it's talking about both passages. So I don't know about this. Expert testimony. Oh, I do remember ableist writers or something like that from passage 1. I mean, from passage 2, right? Was it passage 1 or passage 2? Don't go back, okay? I don't remember myself, but don't go back, okay? That would be wasting time. That's where you waste time if you try to confirm your uncertainties. So, I mean, I'll just leave this, right? Hypothetical scenarios. Does it talk about hypothetical scenarios? What's a hypothetical scenario?
Tyranny will happen.
No, you don't get my question. My question was, what is a hypothetical scenario? Huh?
Made up.
Yeah, made up situation, or I mean, you know, something that could potentially happen, right? I mean, do we have any of that? I mean, you can. I mean, okay, like, okay, you know how everyone just raised their eyes a little bit, like, okay, that's the time to go to the next answer choice, okay? Like, don't spend time thinking like that, okay? Just say, maybe. And the worst thing you can do, again, is doing this, turning back, reading it. That's how you waste time, okay? Of course, no. I know this is not the case, right? Personal anecdotes, of course. Now you can go back. Now you should go back, okay? So, I mean, okay, why don't you guys go back right now? Try look for this. Expert testimony or hypothetical situations. Okay, stop. That should have been enough time. Okay? So if you didn't find it, you're wrong. You're like you suck. Okay? If you didn't find it. Okay? Why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? Well, there's a reason. Think about this. If there were expert testimony, what would have I done? You know? I like to do this, right? I box their opinions if they have that, okay? So, I mean, this, like, you're thinking about this, and then what do? Like you're like, what's a hypothetical scenario? And then you just start thinking, you keep pondering on it. This is easy to spot, right? Okay, so just go back, see if you see this, okay? See if you see this in both passages. Do you see it? Okay, just go back. Do you see expert testimony?
But wouldn't, like, just out of curiosity, like, wouldn't great authors be categorized as experts? Or no?
That's not what I told you to do.
No, but I'm asking.
No, but you shouldn't be asking
Okay.
because that's not what we're doing right now. Okay, literally I'm asking for boxes, okay? Do you see boxes?
No.
No? I boxed it with you guys. Oh? Do you know how to draw a rectangle? Do you see any?
Yes.
Okay, in passage 1 and passage 2, do we see both?
Yeah.
Okay, then let's go back. Why? Because it's saying it uses evidence, right? So I would need a box that supports the author's ideas. Is that right? Okay? You know what I'm saying, right? If it's an opponent's view, that doesn't count because that's not evidence, right? Okay, so for passage 1, where's the box? 빨리. 31. Okay, well, does he use this as something to support his ideas? No. So the answer is hypothetical scenarios. Process of elimination, okay? So what are the hypothetical scenarios? Well, it doesn't really matter. Don't think about it, okay? I mean, like your brain obviously can't comprehend something that's going on over here, but you got rid of all the other answer choices for sure, right? So now have that confirmation bias. Oh, okay, maybe there are hypothetical scenarios in both of the past. Then you'll see it, okay? Then you'll see it. If you go back and then, you know. But, you know, a lot of times people make illogical, okay, why don't you guys all close your eyes? Who chose B? Okay. So, okay, open your eyes, it's fine. Okay, so if you chose B, you made an illogical decision, okay? I'm not saying you suck, but you weren't thinking logically, right? Yeah, I don't know how to explain this, but, you know, I think I did this back when I was taking the test also. But it comes down to this. Okay, I hate that I'm saying this, but back in the day, okay, back in the day, there were 5 answer choices instead of 4, right? So, okay, yeah, shut up. Okay, so let's say I got rid of 3 answer choices. Now I'm debating between these 2 answer choices. Okay, so initially it's like a 50-50, right? Initially it's like a 50-50, and then it turns to like a 60-40, right? So now I'm leaning towards this answer choice. But like this one point like just really bothers me. It feels like it's there. So regardless of this, like sometimes I don't know what I'm doing, but I choose this regardless. Okay, you guys don't know how this happens, but okay, let me use an analogy. Okay, I'll use an analogy. Okay, so okay, after this analogy, we'll take a break. I was at the cafe, okay? I was at the cafe, and then, so, you know how some cafes, they have like a sofa here? Like up against the wall, right? So I was sitting here, and then I had a table in front of me, right? I had a round table in front of me, okay? And then I dropped my pencil, okay? I dropped my pencil, but I couldn't find my pencil, okay? I couldn't find my pencil. So, the thing is, okay, this sofa, it had, I mean, it was down to the floor. So there was no space in between the sofa and the floor. So it could not have gone under the sofa, right? And then, you know, there was a little bit of space in between the sofa and the wall. And this, I mean, this drawing could be misleading, but this I would say was like 3 centimeters, this space, okay? So what I immediately concluded was, oh, okay, my pencil went in there, right? I mean, because I checked the bottom of my table and everything, you know, it wasn't there. So that was the only possible option, right? And so I was looking here, but, you know, I couldn't find it. But it's physically impossible. Like, okay, so how do you drop a pencil? How do you drop a pencil and then this pencil bounces in a perfect angle like this, and then it goes into into this space? That doesn't make any sense. But, you know, I don't have any other options, right? So I was like, yo, okay, it just happened, you know, like, you know, something like that. Sometimes okay, when I was young, okay, this is like a segue, but when I was young, so when I like back when I was like really young, like in elementary school, I was afraid of the dark, right? I was afraid of the dark if there was no one else in the room, and then, you know, well, there's some kind of noise in the living room, and it's just like something like that, you know. So immediately I just conclude, okay, there's witches in this world, right? Okay, it's a witch. You know, immediately just like, okay, there's a witch there, you know, but it turns out it was the laundry machine. But, you know, I couldn't think of that possibility, you know. So why am I telling you this? People jump to illogical conclusions if they keep other options closed, right? This applies to the SAT. Also, like oftentimes when you're debating between 2 answer choices, you make that illogical decision, right? It's just that, you know, like you just you just can't get your mind around the fact that there are hypothetical scenarios here because it's really hard for you to comprehend. But if you just went the other way, right? If you just went the other way and said, okay, let's take a really cold hard look at the facts, you know? A pencil cannot do that. I can't drop a pencil and then this pencil just like just, you know, perfect angle and then just goes in. Like it's impossible, right? So you should do that, like expert testimony. Then I would have boxed it, right? If you think about it logically, you know, you would have eliminated this, right? That's what I'm trying to say. The pencil was actually like stuck at the bottom of the table. So that's a possibility that I couldn't have thought about, right? All right. Anyway, okay. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back to the questions. Okay. Okay, next question. Both passages argue that individual states, okay, so it's gonna be pretty easy. Why? Because it's about what they both agree upon. So it's something that you've seen twice, right? Some idea that you've seen twice. Okay, so what can we say about states? Do we have a line reference question? No. Right? Okay, so would not benefit from following the same set of laws. Yes, you should be able to recognize this. It cannot extend to all the states equally. So this is okay. Are becoming too unwieldy due to the lack of one unifying. What does unwieldy, what does wield mean? Okay, and if you wield a weapon, right? In the literal sense, you can say that, right? You wield a weapon, right? You hold and you use a weapon. Unwieldy, it's hard to control, I guess, right? Due to lack of one unifying government. No, run the risk of engaging in multiple. Really civil wars, right? Duplicated functions and should be eventually no, they don't want them to be consolidated. So A is the right answer. Reasonably be inferred from passage 1 that the author is. Okay, so it's just for passage 1, right? Do we see a line reference? Yes, we do. Okay. I don't go to the line reference question. Why? Why? Huh? General, yes, that's right. And reasonably be inferred. Worst case scenario. Why? Reasonably be inferred or most strongly suggest means what? It's not rephrasing. The question is not just rephrasing, right? You're not just taking something from the passage. It maybe has a little bit of gap, right? So it's not like you can look at the line references and delineate exactly what it's trying to say, okay? So you would need to go through the answer choices first. It's easy to do it that way. Remember what I said about paired questions, right? If the question stem is specific, you can do the line reference question first, right? That's more efficient. But what if it's a more general question? Then you do that question first and then go to the line reference, right? So reasonably be inferred from passage 1, okay, that the author is skeptical. Yeah, he said, he expressed a lot of uncertainty and he said, I don't see any favorable parts. So skeptical that consolidating the government can occur peacefully. Well, what? Peacefully? Did he say there's going to be a war if we don't do this? Okay, just kind of leave it. Okay, curious about reforming the federal system of government. Curious? Who chose B? Didn't he say, okay, no, I'm not going to try to confuse you guys, okay? If you guys didn't choose it, it's fine. Okay, C, concerned that increasing the independence of states will weaken local governments. It's not going to weaken, I mean, we never talked about local governments, right? He just expresses concern about one consolidated government. Doubtful that the majority of people will vote. No one talked about voting. So, I mean, just, I do have an issue with this, but what I'm going to do is go to the line reference first, okay? So I'm going to go to the line reference first, and then I'm just going to look. Okay, so it's all concentrated in the first paragraph, right? All concentrated in the first paragraph. What I have here, I want to kind of substantiate this. Skeptical that consolidating the government can occur peacefully, right? It's really hard to occur peacefully. Okay, so let's take a look at the first paragraph here, right? So here we go. And you should be able to see this. So even if you don't remember minor details, you can say, okay, I'm not sure about this wording, right? I'm not sure about it will not occur peacefully, because you don't necessarily, you kind of skip this part, right? You're not so sure of it, but when you go back and you try to confirm all the line references, you will see it, right? Just get a general sense and eliminate all the answer choices that are totally irrelevant. But the right answer choices, like I said, they're going to contain wording that you're pretty familiar with, some ideas that you've seen, right? So I guess D would be the answer for the line reference question, right? So number 7 would be D, and number 6 would be A, right? Okay, invaded what? Invaded what? All right, so line 37, invaded, okay, different laws, blah, 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 opinions exist in a way which by uniform systems would be unreasonably invaded. Invaded by a uniform system of laws. Invade what? Different laws, customs. So, I mean, the wording itself is a little bit complicated, but you need to think about it this, okay, which by a uniform system. So, system of laws, uniform system of laws would invade laws, these laws, right? These laws, customs, and opinions, right? So, infringed would be, infringed would be the best, right? So, what does infringe mean? Yeah, so if you infringe upon another person's rights or something like that, it would be you could say violate, but yes. So you're kind of, this should be, I mean, your rights should not invade upon, right? But you're kind of like intruding upon it, right? That's what infringing upon something would mean, right? Usurp means what? Take away, right? Trespass is, trespass is you just go in without permission. Permeate means what? It could mean soak, go through something, permeate, right? But we don't talk about this when we're talking about rights or laws or that kind of thing, right? So infringe would be the best here. Referring to the potential government as a despotism implies that the proposal is, okay, this one's so easy, right? Okay, so just the connotation in this word, right? Just the connotation in this word. Extreme and dangerous sounds pretty good. Unwise seems okay. Possible, what? Whenever someone says despotism, does that mean it's possible? Like, no. Troublesome, okay, that's good. Uncertainty, no, uncertainty is not contained in this word, right? Hazardous, it's good, but not inevitable, right? So A would be the right answer. How would the author of passage 2 most likely respond to the author's idea about consolidation of powers in line 31? Okay, so I'm going to say, what am I going to do? I'm going to, first of all, get rid of A, right? Because I know the fact that they both agree, right? They agree. They're on the same side. With approval is okay. With caution, with support, I'm just going to look at these two answer choices first, right? These two seem pretty good because they help support his argument potentially because they bring up a new idea. Really? What are you trying to accomplish here? Like, how would you know? Even if they do bring up a new idea, how would you know the author of passage 2 would likely say, hey, thanks for bringing up a new point? How do you know that what kind of person this person is, right? So anyway, I would go back to line 31 to 39 first. 31 to 39. What would it say? Independent of many great authors, blah, 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 never can extend equal benefits. Yeah, never can extend equal benefits. That is an idea both expressed in both passages, right? So I won't say with caution. I'm just going to get rid of this. And yeah, so this one is fine because they help support his argument. Yes. Wait, okay, so it is with the line reference. So you just need to pick an answer choice that says it will not extend to other parts of the, it will not extend equally to every part of the country, right? So that answer would be here, starting from here. In large states, the same principles of legislation will not apply to all the parts, right? So this point. So which is that? B. Okay, now let's go to that passage. What was that passage? Our object has been. No, we looked at this. We saw this. Dear Mr. President, right? Okay, so we're just doing the same thing today, right? This is also about the U.S. Constitution. Okay, so now usually international school students do the worst if a federalism passage shows up. Because they don't like if some students don't even take U.S. history and they take the test. So, yeah. Anyways, if we do these two, I feel like you guys would be ready for this. Anyway, let's take a look. Constitutional Convention. Okay, did we talk? You guys remember the Constitutional Convention? What was the Constitutional Convention? What? what was the Constitutional Convention?
When all the leaders from the states gathered together
Yes.
in Virginia
Yeah.
to discuss what the Articles of Confederation proposed U.S. Constitution.
Yeah. So representatives of each state, they came together, right? So everybody from each state, they came together, and then they were like, okay, let's try to fix this Articles of Confederation. But they couldn't come to. I mean, they said, hey, after all, I think we need a consolidated government, right? So they came up with the United States Constitution there. And a key point that you need to know about the Constitutional Convention is that there was a major disagreement. And that disagreement was between the large states and the small states. Remember this? What was the disagreement? Popularity? Whether they were going to elect representatives in proportion to the population, or they're going to have one representative from each state, right? So what was their solution? Yeah, bicameral legislation, right? Bicameral legislation meaning they have the Senate, which has an equal number of representatives from each state, right? And the House of Representatives, in which it's in proportion to the population, right? So large states have more representatives in the House of Representatives than the small states do. Okay, and so let's take a look. Given by Benjamin Franklin to the Constitutional Convention. Okay, so he's giving a speech at the Constitutional Convention, and is the debate about this? No, I don't think so, because it says the convention was deciding whether to ratify the final version of the U.S. Constitution, right? So it's saying, should we ratify this? Ratify means what? Agree and put into action, right? Saying like, okay, let's make this happen. I agree to this. Let's do this. That's what ratifying means, right? Okay, dear Mr. President. Okay, so is he talking to the President of the United States? Is he talking to? No. Okay, when you're giving a speech at a convention, you address the president there, right? It's just the way it is, right? So disregard this. I confess that there are several parts of this Constitution which I do not at present approve. Okay, simple, very simple. Okay, I confess that. Okay, so can you sense this is a concession? Can you sense that it's a concession? I don't know what it is, but why would you start about? I mean, I confess that there are several parts of this Constitution which I do not at present approve. And then he says, yeah, and I will never approve of them. That doesn't make any sense. He said, yeah, I admit there are parts that I don't like, but I'm not sure I shall never approve them. Right? There you go. Right? So he's saying, there are faults. So he's admitting to the faults. There are faults to the Constitution, but maybe someday I will agree to them. Right? Maybe someday I will approve them. And then he has a colon, meaning he will be supporting this point. Right? But having lived long, I have experienced many instances of being obliged by better information or fuller consideration to change opinions, right? Okay, so this is his argument. Hey, I'm old. I experienced a lot of things. I changed my opinion a lot, right? Before, even on important subjects, which I once thought was right, but found to be otherwise. Okay, so, I mean, this is kind of a peculiar passage, right? He's not giving any arguments. I mean, his arguments, it doesn't pertain to the content of the Constitution itself. What is it talking about? His personal experience. He's saying, I've lived long enough and, sometimes I change my mind on important matters, right? So it's kind of showing that humbleness and saying, it is therefore that the older I grow, the more apt I am to doubt my own judgment. Okay, so that's his reason, right? So he's saying, I'm not so sure that I'm 100% right, so maybe I'll change in the future. And to pay more respect to the judgment of others, right? Most men indeed, as well as most sects in religion, think themselves in possession of all truth. Okay, so I want to do this, right? This is what most men believe, right? Box them, right? Because they do have a point of view. Or they at least have a characterization. What are these people doing? What do these people think? They think they have the possession of all truth, right? So they're really conceited, right? They think, okay, I know everything. You're wrong and I'm right, right? But Benjamin Franklin is saying, no, I am not like that, right? I'm not like that. So, and that wherever others differ from them, it is so far error. Okay, so that's what most people believe, right? Okay, so let's kind of write down what he has so far, right? Okay, so he says, yes, there are faults, right? There are faults in the Constitution, but might change. I might change my opinion. But I might change opinion. And why? This is largely based on experience, right? This is because of his experience. And then he mentions most men. There are a lot of people who believe they are in possession of all the truth, right? They think they're always right, okay? And then it says steal. Okay, steal. It's a person, okay? Protestant. What's a Protestant?
It's really
Shut up. No, just kidding. I mean, Matthew was going to say something.
It's a sect of Christianity.
Yeah, sect of Christianity. Yes, it's right. Protestant. What were they protesting?
Corruption of the Catholics.
Oh, yes. Impressive, right? Yeah. That's exactly right. The Catholic Church, they were doing some things that they do not agree with, and Protestants, they made their own separate church because of the disagreements, right? So, I mean, for those of you who don't know, right? I mean, if you say church or 교회 in Korean, it all refers to Protestant churches, right? They're all Protestant, right? You call Catholic 성당 in Korea, but all the other churches, they're Protestant, right? A Protestant in a dedication tells the Pope is what? I mean, Catholic, right? That the only difference between our churches in their opinions of the certainty of their doctrines is, the only difference is what? The Church of Rome, Catholic, right? Catholic, is infallible, and the Church of England, Anglican, is never in the wrong. This is the Anglican Church. Okay, we won't go into detail on this. Okay, we'll talk about this, I guess, tomorrow if we have time. But though many private persons think almost as highly of their many private persons, what do they think? They think almost as highly of their own infallibility as that of their sect. Okay, so he's going on and on about these people who think they're infallible, who think they're right. Right? Few express it so naturally as a certain French. No. Don't do this, right? He's saying not a lot of people, right? Not a lot of people express it so naturally as a certain French lady. So who's this certain French lady? Who in a dispute with her sister said, I don't know how it happened, sister, but I meet with nobody but myself. That's always in the right. Huh, what does this mean? I meet with nobody but myself? So it means she's all alone all the time? Is that what it means? What does meet mean here? By the way, this is a joke, okay?
Agree?
Yeah, agree. Okay? So I agree with nobody but myself, right? So she's saying, everybody's wrong, only I'm right, right? And then she says, that's always in the right. So the only thing that she's right about, so it's a joke, all right? It's a joke. She's saying, the only thing I'm right about is I don't agree with anybody, right? So that's his joke, right? He just kind of points that out, like people who say they're all infallible and that kind of thing, right? Okay, so next part. In these sentiments, sir, I agree to this constitution. Okay, so like that whole paragraph was one big point, right? Him talking about, there's all these people, like Church of England, Church of Rome, like these people, they think they're all right all the time. And then he tells this joke, and then he says, in these sentiments, I agree to this constitution with all its faults, if they are such. All right, so this is his position in pretty explicit terms, right? So he says, I know that there are faults to this constitution, but I agree to the constitution. Constitution, okay? So if you write on the board, it's really hard to spell for some reason. Constitution. I don't understand. Like, I used to laugh at teachers who misspell stuff. And no, it's something about the board. Like if you're writing on paper or if you're typing, it's fine, but it looks different when you're up here and you're writing it. I don't know what it is. Anyway, because I think a general government necessary for us, and there is no form. Okay, so he's talking about the reason here. And there is no form of government but what may be a blessing to the people if well administered. Okay, if something is well administered, it will be a blessing. And believe farther that this is likely to be well administered for a course of years and can only end in despotism, as other forms have done before it, when the people shall become so corrupted as to what so long. What is this doing? All right? What are you going to do about this? No? Skip? Like, is that like a universal solution that you just, All right, so you need to know this, though. Like, this whole thing is his justification for why he agrees to this, right? Because he starts this off with the but, right? And then he goes on, right? So I guess you can skip it if you want. But you would need to come back to it if you're being asked a question. So you should, just do something about this. Say like, okay, hey, read this later on, or something like that. Tell that to yourself, okay? If you don't want to get too preoccupied with this. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom. Okay, so when you assemble people and you ask for their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices. Okay, so they will have their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinions, their local interest, and their selfish views. All right, so it's saying, yeah, when you assemble a group of people, there will be a downside to it. Everybody will bring their, prejudices. Right? From such an assembly, can a perfect production be expected? Okay, I see his point, right? So he's saying, when a group of people get together, it's impossible to not have any prejudices, right? So we can't really expect a perfect production. This is something that cannot happen. He's making a point with this question, right? It therefore astonishes me, sir, to find the system approaching so near to perfection as it does. So he does admit that it is approaching perfection, right? So it is pretty good. It does have faults, but it is pretty good. And I think it will astonish our enemies who are waiting with confidence to hear that our counsels are confounded, like those of the builders. Okay, so he's kind of appealing, like he's bringing in like a third party, and he's saying like, okay, think of what our enemies will think if we pull this off. They will be scared of us. Oh, yeah, that's my guess, but something like that. Are confounded like those of the builders of Babel. And that our states are on the point of separation, only to meet hereafter for the purpose of cutting one another's throats, right? So they are enemies. They're probably hoping that we fall apart, right? Thus, I consent, sir, to this constitution. Okay, again, all right. So, again, his points, right? Because I expect no better. Okay, expect no better, and because I am not sure that is not the best. So. It does have faults, but this is probably the best we can do. Why? Because when you assemble a group of people, you will inevitably bring prejudices along with you. Okay? Opinions I have had of its errors, I sacrifice to the public good. Okay? Sacrifice to the public good. I've never whispered a syllable of them abroad. Within these walls they were born, and here they shall die. If every one of us is in returning to our constituents, what's a constituent? What?
Like something that forms a portion of an entire whole.
Okay, in this case though, returning to our constituents.
Terms of constitution. Terms of constitution.
Don't randomly guess.
People?
Yes, the people. Okay. So let's say you're a representative. Okay. Let's say so in Korea they elect representatives for every gu, right? So what this is Gangnam-gu, right? Who's okay? I don't know who it is, but let's say for Gangnam-gu there's this local representative called A, right? So so for A, people who live in Gangnam-gu is his or her constituents. Okay, you get it? Okay, so the people that representative represents, right? Okay, so when we return to our people, right? Because these are all representatives who met there to debate the issue, right? So when we return to our constituents, returning to our constituents, we're to report the objections he has had to it and endeavor to gain partisans in support of them. We might prevent its being generally received, right? Okay, so if you go back to the constituents and you talk about, the Constitution, I looked at it, it sucked, right? Talking about the objections, and then it will prevent it from being received. It will not get passed, right? So I don't want to do that, right? And thereby lose all the salutary effects and great advantages resulting naturally in favor among foreign nations, as well as, so it's saying this favor is too great a loss, right? We don't want to lose this. Much of the strength and efficiency of any government in procuring and securing happiness to the people depends on opinion. Okay, it depends on this. So this is necessary. On the general opinion of the goodness of the government. Okay, goodness of government as well as of the wisdom and integrity of his governors. Okay, so wisdom and integrity of governors. Okay, so it depends on all of these, right? So securing happiness for the people requires all of these. I hope, therefore, that for our own sakes, as a part of the people, and for the sake, we shall act heartily and unanimously in recommending this Constitution. So he's saying we should put this, we should ratify this. I mean, yeah, he repeated his point over and over again, right? But anyway, yeah, actually, this part, right? If approved by Congress and confirmed by the conventions, okay, wherever our influence may extend and turn our future thoughts and endeavors to the means of having it well administered. Okay. On the whole, sir, I cannot help expressing a wish that every member of the convention who may still have objections to it would, with me, on this occasion, doubt a little bit of his own infallibility, right? So, okay, so he's saying, doubt that you're right, right? Doubt the fact that you're right, okay? And join me, right? Agree with this. Let's do this, right? Because the things that, the advantages that we can gain from this are too great. Like, a lot of different reasons, but you know what I'm saying, right? So it's not necessarily perfect, but it's almost perfect considering that people will bring their prejudices inevitably, and there are so many advantages to this. If we raise objections to this, then the people will catch on it and we will not get this passed. And that will be a waste, right? That's what he's saying. Good? Okay, questions on this? Okay, I know there's gonna be no questions. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Central claim. Okay, central claim is, I mean, this one is pretty clear on its central claim. It's saying, okay, I agree to the Constitution and or let us all agree to the Constitution. Let's get this thing passed, right? Let's ratify this thing, okay? A, the Constitution will have to suffice until it is proven to be inadequate. What? Why? I'm not so sure about this. Okay. The objections to the Constitution are trivial. Actually, he wouldn't say it's trivial. He says there are faults, right? I wouldn't say it's trivial and should be disregarded. No, he's not saying let's disregard the faults. He's just saying, you know, we should agree despite its faults, right? It is kind of confusing. The objections to the Constitution can be dismissed. No, he's not saying let's dismiss it. He recognizes that there are faults. He's not saying they're trivial, right? Unanimous? No. What does unanimous mean? Without any objections. Constitution is adequate? Yeah, right? Adequate. He's not saying it's perfect. He's saying it's okay, right? We can do this. And should be passed without objection. Yeah. We should not object to it, right? Because what I guess then unanimous also, I mean, I can't just erase unanimous, but he did say we should do that without objection, right? Because if we object to it, then what would happen? The people would turn against it also, right? So D would be correct here. Okay. Franklin characterizes himself as someone who is, I would say, old, right? Old. Not sarcastic. Experienced, yes. No. Here you go. Experience, right? So about himself, right? Like he dedicates an entire paragraph to this, right? Saying, I'm old, I experienced a lot of different things, and I know that at sometimes I'm wrong, right? Yeah, so this is probably going to be towards the beginning of the passage. I remember this. So let's just verify if it's lines 7 to 10. Okay, so just go back to line 7, and is there that? It is therefore that older I grow, the more apt I am to doubt my own judgment. Yeah, and to pay more respect to the judgment of others. Yeah, so this is the part that he talks about him being like him talking about his experience, him talking about his recognition of his fallibility. Right? 4. the word local most nearly means, okay, so local, let's go back. Line 35. Hey, local interests, okay, local interests. Okay, so let's take a look at this part. For when you assemble a number of men, yeah, okay, I remember the sentence, right? When you assemble a men, you bring their prejudices, their passions, their errors, their local interests, and their selfish views, right? So I'm just gonna say, okay, local interest, right? And this goes along with, I don't know, their opinions and their selfish views, that kind of thing, right? Selfish views, prejudices, right? So all of these can kind of go together. So let's go back. Geographical interest. Your interest in geography? No, right? Geographic, that doesn't make any sense. Provincial, yeah, that's what it means, like in that area. So it is possible. Nearby interest. Your interest is near you? Is that, no. Domestic, no, it's all in, I mean, okay. So this is where you could get confused. So you need to think about this in terms of its context, right? Okay, not domestic, but it's saying, like, it's really parochial, right? Parochial meaning, what does parochial mean? Narrow-minded, parochial, right? He's talking about those kinds of things. So it would be provincial, not necessarily domestic, right? Number 5, according to the passage, the main objection. Okay, so what was the main objection? So, I mean, if you go back to the passage, right? I mean, don't go back to the passage, but if you think about the passage, right? Think about it. Okay, was it did any part suggest that it's unpopular? No. Did it say it's despotic? No. That's from the previous passage. No, they did not say this. They said there were some faults, so this is okay. Partisan means what? People? So so we have a partisan here? Yeah. No. Partisan.
People with despotic ideas.
Huh?
People with despotic
Don't throw out random ideas, okay? Just, I mean, like, just saying like duck, chicken, just whatever that comes to your mind. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay. No, it's not okay, but okay. Partisan, okay. Let's think of a context. Okay, so you know, okay, so in the States, in the United States, you have two main political parties, right? Republican and Democratic, right? Usually, I mean, a lot of times they disagree, right? Same in Korea. But usually when they get together for a coordinated effort, like a cooperative effort, they say, oh, it's a bipartisan effort, right? So it's not necessary. So bipartisan meaning it's it's the two factions coming together and they're making a cooperative effort. You know what I mean? Partisan means not that, right? So it's like a local interesting, right? It's like a faction, right? So I would go with unpopular. No, what? Imperfect here, right? I think I'm done for the day. Okay, over the course of the passage, the main focus shifts from, okay, so it's important not to go back, okay? So I do not have anything in mind. Remember, for focus shift questions, okay, you're not going to have a pre-phrased answer, okay? Just have an open mind, go through the answer choices. Acknowledgement of criticism. Acknowledgement of criticism. Let's think about this. Okay, so let's try to make this an answer. Okay, so would he acknowledge? Did he acknowledge something in the beginning? Yes. He said there are faults, right? Yeah, I admit there are faults to this constitution, but nonetheless, let's do it. To a dismissal of it being the criticism's validity. Yeah, So he's saying, yeah, a lot of people say it's imperfect, like we saw in the question before this. A lot of people say it has its faults, but that's not a valid argument. So this is okay, right? It's not a valid argument because that can potentially cost us a lot of things. Admission of a problem, okay, so I could say the problem is that there are faults. To the proposal of a solution, proposal of that solution being, okay, so this would be a little bit confusing. Why? Okay, I want to think about it later. An overview of inconsistencies. No. Didn't talk about any inconsistencies. So inconsistency would mean something that's inherently contradicting itself or something like that. Not necessarily. An argument for action? No. Well, yeah, let's agree, right? Let's agree to the Constitution. To a summary of guide, really? Did he summarize any principles? No. Okay, so, okay, admission of a problem. Okay, so you need to think straight here, okay? If you're admitting a problem, that problem would be, this government has faults, right? So how does he solve these faults? No, that doesn't happen. So I would go with A, right? Attributes the Constitution's flaws to the fact that, okay, so why do you think, okay, why does it have flaws? That's the question. Why does it have flaws? And I know the answer to this actually. Okay? It's good if you know the answer. I mean, if you don't, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the line reference question, right? So, and you're going to look for the answer choice that explains why, right? Why does it have flaws? I mean, it was pretty noticeable, right? What was the argument? Whenever you bring together a group of people, they're going to bring their prejudices and local interests along with them. So, that, right? So, where is this? Where is this? 32, right? For when here you go, right? So B here, and it will be B here. Had their own opinions, right? Their local interests. Main comparison Franklin draws between the assembly and the churches is in terms of their members. Okay, so what's the difference, right? What's the main comparison? What's different? What did he say about the churches? For the churches, he kind of criticized them, saying they all think they're right. They're always in the right. That's what they think. But not us. Let's not do that, right? So it's not adherence to doctrine. It's talking about we don't know we're wrong, right? So D, to their weakness. Their weakness, they don't know that they can be fallible, right? Fallibility is their weakness. They don't know that. They don't know that they're fallible. They think they're infallible. So D would be the right answer. Main purpose of Franklin's comment about the French lady. Okay, French lady, why do we mention this? Okay, so that was kind of like a joke, right? Does she really exist? No, I mean, I don't think so. Like, it's just a joke that but he's not ridiculing her, okay? Allude to the division, really? If you mention, hey, I heard a lady say this, is that a testament to a division in public opinion? No. Universal truth in a humorous way, yeah. So she does admit to a fault that every person has, right? And that's the joke, right? General. General opinion. General opinion of the goodness of the government. General opinion of the goodness of the government. General opinion. So this would be, okay, it's not, okay, so the answer is A, overall opinion, general opinion. Like, it's talking about the general opinion, like everyone's opinion in general, right? You could think this is typical or ordinary. I mean, it's possible. I mean, this is a little bit harder than the actual test. This is from Khan Academy, but this vocabulary and context question, I would say, is a little bit more difficult. Okay, let's think about something typical. Okay, let's think about what's opposite of typical, right? What's something that's not typical? I mean, you could say like eccentric, like something in very, atypical would be the exact opposite. But we're not talking about something that's a typical opinion. General opinion means what the people think, like what a lot of people think, right? So that would be better. Overall opinion would be better. It's not what's ordinary and what's not, right? It would be A here. Okay, so any questions on this passage? Okay. Sorry, can I take a look at, yeah. So we didn't do one passage today that we were supposed to read. Okay, so I want you guys to do 3 passages if you can, okay, by tomorrow. So it starts, the first passage that you would do is, the title is I am in American Day speech. Okay, so it's just the next one, okay? So, before we end, okay, we'll talk about this tomorrow, since we're kind of out of time. We'll talk about FDR tomorrow, okay? And yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can stay after class. You can ask me, okay?
Are you doing 3 passages?
Huh?
Are you doing 3 passages?
Yes. Okay. Bye.